Good morning, 5th grade. Today we're going to continue reading in our text, Esperanza Rising, and we'll be in chapter 2. Before we get started, you have a quick write. It says, describe your grandmother. What is she like? How does she respond when you are worried or do not feel good? Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the focus question. Today we want to know, how does the author use metaphors to convey big ideas? And this is part of analyzing and interpreting metaphorical language to connect that language to what's happening in the chapter. Our vocabulary words today are naive, and that describes a person who's lacking experience or wisdom. The second word is crochet, and that is when you knit. It's like knitting, basically. You use yarn and a needle. And the third one is social class, and that is the difference in people in society based on how much money they have. So these are examples of social classes: rich, middle class, or poor. Naive matches this picture because the fruit thinks that they're moving to like a new home, but they're naive. They don't realize that their new home is a blender and they're about to get eaten. All right, go ahead and turn the page, and we are going to begin reading on page 12. There it is, right underneath the break. Okay, and so where we picked off yesterday is where Esperanza is worried because her father hasn't come home yet, and she thinks that pricking her finger on the rose made her, is like bringing on this bad luck. We're going to use our CSPS strategy to help us track our thinking as we're reading the text. All right, let's start with T. Tea was ready in Papa's study, and so was Abuelita. Come, Minita, my granddaughter, said Abuelita, holding up yarn and crochet hooks. I am starting a new blanket and will teach you the zigzag. Esperanza's grandmother, whom everyone called Abuelita, lived with them and was a smaller, older, more wrinkled version of Mama. She looked very distinguished, wearing a respectable black dress and some gold loops she wore in her ears every day, and her white hair pulled back into a bun at the nape of her neck. But Esperanza loved her more for her capricious ways than for her propriety. Abuelita might host a group of ladies for a formal tea in the afternoon, and then, after they had gone, be found wandering barefoot in the grapes with a book in her hand, quoting poetry to the birds. Although some things were always the same with Abuelita, the lace-edged handkerchief peeking out from beneath her sleeve of her dress, others were surprising: a flower in her hair, a stone in her pocket, or a philosophical saying salted into conversation. When Abuelita walked into a room, everyone scrambled to make her comfortable. Even Papa would give up his chair for her. Esperanza complained, "Must we always crochet to take our minds off worry?" She sat next to her grandmother anyway. We'll stop right there because we have information about the setting and our character. We know that Esperanza, from the bottom of page 13, we know that she doesn't want to crochet and that she is still worried about Papa. And in box 1, we would write, Esperanza does not like to crochet. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the quote. And you can write down that quote at the bottom of page 13. Esperanza complained, "Must we always crochet to take our minds off worry?" Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the setting. And for the setting, it tells us right underneath this page break that they're having tea in Papa's study, and Esperanza is with Abuelita there. And so in box 2, we would write, Esperanza is in Papa's study with Abuelita, learning how to crochet. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the quote. For the quote, you could write down this first sentence underneath the page break. Tea was ready in Papa's study, and so was Abuelita. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready to keep reading. And now as we turn the page, we're going to be listening for the problem. What happened to your finger? Asked Abuelita. A big thorn, said Esperanza. Abuelita nodded and said thoughtfully, No hay rosa sin espinas. No hay rosa sin espinas. There is no rose without thorns. Esperanza smiled, knowing that Abuelita wasn't talking about flowers at all, but that there was no life without difficulties. She watched the silver crochet needle dance back and forth in her grandmother's hand. When a strand of her hair fell into her lap, Abuelita picked it up and held it against the yarn and stitched it into the blanket. Esperanza, in this way my love and my good wishes will be in the blanket forever. Now watch. 10 stitches up the top of the mountain, add 1 stitch. 9 stitches down to the bottom of the valley, skip 1. Esperanza picked up her own crochet needle and copied Abuelita's movements and then looked at her own crocheting. The tops of her mountains were lopsided and the bottoms of her valleys were all bunched up. Abuelita smiled, reached over, and pulled the yarn, unraveling all of Esperanza's rows. Do not be afraid to start over, she said. Esperanza sighed and began again with 10 stitches. All right, we'll stop right there because Esperanza has a problem. She gets frustrated that she's not good at crocheting. It talks about how the tops of her mountains were lopsided and the bottoms of her valleys were all bunched up. In box 3, you would write, Esperanza is frustrated because she's not good at crocheting. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the quote. And for the quote, you would write down what we've underlined at the bottom of page 14, top of page 15. The tops of her mountains were lopsided and the bottoms of her valleys were all bunched up. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the solution. And for the solution, Abuelita tells Esperanza she says, don't be afraid to start over. And she pulls out, all the stitches and Esperanza has to start again. And so in box 4, we would write, Esperanza continues to crochet and starts over. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the quote. And you would write down this quote in the middle of page 15. Esperanza sighed and began again with 10 stitches. All right, for the paragraph, it says, describe the challenge Esperanza faces in chapter 2. What do these details reveal about her life?